All right, what about this then? I'll tell you one we could pivot to talk about. Obviously, it hasn't happened yet, but there's this amazing move they've made in Vitality where apparently they already had this set up before the major ended and, it was going to happen anyway. But you could easily believe that, like, every general manager the day after the final just went to their phone and they were just like, right, sell everyone and try and buy everyone good. Nobody's ever going to win again unless we all make super teams. Like, I almost got that vibe. So when this news came out, it almost is like this news is like, it's like that shit from that meme from that Batman movie, like, we must kill the Batman. That's like what everyone's trying to do to Simple and Navi now, right? They're all trying to make super teams. So this Vitality one is pretty crazy, right? Lagia, what do you think of this? Because obviously Vitality was a purely French team. You had to be French or Belgian, basically, to be it in the past. They spoke French, and as far as we knew, they had no intentions to change. Like, they looked like with the whole Kyojin thing and the players they brought in over the years, that they were going to stay that route. And instead, they've done this crazy move where they bring in some Astralis players, Astralis coach, and they're going to, like I say, they're going to try and make some kind of a super team about Zero. What do you think about this potential move? Are you up for it? Is it good?
I'm up for it 100%. I'm just not on the same page with who they left in. I'm not gonna name really any names or anything. I actually fuck it. I think that Mizuta.
You're not an Apex fan? Oh, Misuta's the one, right?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not really a big fan of Mizuta.
Okay.
I think that he has improved, that he plays much better than he did in the beginning. But I think his level is already reached. I don't think that he will be much better in future. And
would you have kept ochs instead?
I would have kept ochs just for the pure experience that he has, for the guy who he is. It's always, look, if you're a player and you see the name ochs on the server, you already think a little bit different, regardless of how good this guy is right now or not, because he's a player that when it matters, he will be there. You know that he can step up, and then that if he steps up, it's going to be fucking hard for you to win a game. That's how good of a player he is, and I think that it's a big factor for them to have one more guy like that. Even though Dupree is coming, I think that he's kind of at the same level like ochs in that regard. But I think keeping Shoxy and switching Mizuta out would have been a little bit better for them. And obviously, speaking about Dupree, Magisk, and Zonic, there's no questions about them. I think all three of them are one of the very best at their level, at what they do. Zonic, I think, top 3 coaches all time. Was for a very long time the best coach in the world. Many people try to copy, ask what are they doing right and what not. So I think it's a good move for Vitality. Do I think they will be much better than they have been in their prime? I don't know. It can go the wrong direction. Even though if you look at the lineup, I think everyone would agree that they should be always a top 5 contender team. Since they made upgrades with their changes, I think Dupree and Magisk and Kyojin and Shoxy out. I think that Magisk and Dupree would bring more to the team, but it will take a lot of time. And then it's also the question: how are they going to prevail the rough times if they don't win a big tournament? The shit talk that's going to come then afterwards. So that's going to be that's going to be, I think, an important factor for them. But overall, I think that they made good changes.
Yeah, with Vitality, my initial reaction when I saw the rumors and whatever the report was, what a power play move. Where has this come from? And kind of a statement of intent from Vitality that, listen, they have been a borderline elite team for a long time, but clearly for them that wasn't good enough. And they decided this opportunity arose and they were going to completely pivot the entire team. In terms of the players, I think the roles make a fair amount of sense in terms of this team. I think Mcginis, particularly last year, in terms of the period where Charlotte didn't have Zitnix and he had to fill in a lot of his roles, and like on T side, he would lurk a lot more maps basically because Zitnix wasn't there. That's very important, I think, on this team because I'm pretty sure Mcginis is going to play those sort of roles. But yeah, in terms of the kind of Misuta ochs discussion, that's where I would have an issue with ochs, is that I don't think the roles work out that well. I don't think you really have many people that could anchor a bomb site, especially a small site. So I think that would be the issue if you held on to ochs in this sort of lineup. But in terms of looking at this team now, I'd say in terms of, even if you've got an issue with Misuta, moving to English, you have blown like the player pool wide open, completely wide open. You're no longer restricted to French players. So down the line, if they wanted to move in a direction of finding a player like, not Brolan himself, but a player like Brolan who could anchor a site and then be like, going with the first in the pack T side, a very young player, skilled. You've already got all the experience here. They could do that. So, I mean, in terms of looking forward, if they're going to stay English and it's going to work, it can make a lot of sense in terms of the players you could pick up in terms of that respect. But yeah, obviously all the questions around this team are transitioning to English. We know for a long time that Zyra's had issues speaking English. Go throw back to the interviews and all that back in the day. So there's a lot of questions there. We know Apex's English is fine, and same with Dupree, Magus, Zonic, all that. Done enough media stuff over the years to have good English. So that for me is the big question. And yeah, well, presumably they knew that when they formed this roster. So hopefully behind the scenes, they've got a lot of plans in terms of maybe even tutors and stuff to teach English better and get used to it in the team. So I do like the lineup. I like the power play for Vitality. And even if this lineup doesn't work out, going to English gives them so many options moving forwards.
Yes.
One question: where do you guys put Vitality before the changes, before the major in the ranking list?
I thought they were a bit ropey myself. Like I would have said, like I don't care what the rating is in HLTV. If we're going on like how good they are, like for real, I would have said they were maybe like like the 9th best team or something. I thought they weren't that good overall.
I'd probably go a tiny bit higher, maybe 6th, 7th, 8th, that sort of number. Yeah, and actually, I would say at the major, I think they gave Na'Vi the best run for their money in terms of actually taking them close. Yeah, so they played pretty good CS, especially if they knew a move was coming. So maybe not elite level, but definitely top 10 in my books.
Okay. Well, then it's reachable, I guess, for them to make it in the top 5. I mean, for me, I think many people see them or saw them or rated them before as like a top 6 team. Top 7, they can always upset or like come deep in the tournament. So if many people like rate them for let's say I'm rating them like top 5, top 6 before this tournament, how much better does the other team have to do to become better than this team? And that there's not many spots that you can fill to become better than this team. It's like you have to become top 4 to even exceed the expectations from yourself and other people. And top 4 or top 5 becoming Counter-Strike right now is so fucking hard. It's really so hard. The competition is so strong, even though like there's a difference between top 3 and the rest of the teams. But let's say everything that's like, let's say 6, 7, 8 down to top 30 all the way, every team can beat you. If you have a bad game, every single team of those can beat you. And I don't know. I think it's going to be hard for them to get fast in the top 5, but with time, I think that they can actually make it with this lineup. And I think maybe they can still switch one more player. Like it's not like that they are 100% set on this team. I think they will try a few things out, 1, 2, 3 tournaments, see how things goes, and they can still switch players. So, and Vitality is not the org that doesn't have the money to get basically any player they want to. So, like Alan said, also it's good for them going international, which leaves them a lot of options in future if things don't work out.
Yeah, I think the key thing is the international angle, because it means that Masuta doesn't have to be the right player. You can get at that point, you're already going to have Ziwu, Dupree, Magus, etc. Like you're going to have a lot of pull still to get another player if you want one. And at this point, quite frankly, I even think personally Masuta probably doesn't end up staying there unless they literally become the best team. Because just logically, in like 6-8 months, you're going to realise I only kept him because I was just picking who stays in Vitality. Eventually, it will. Once you're a truly international team, you won't be thinking, well, I've got to keep Masuta. What you'll be thinking is I could have. Insert any other players. Think of all the other great international players you could have. I know people in general want to do this move like Dota and League where every team's just international, blah, blah, blah. So basically, I actually think generally teams, if they can, should try to stay one language or one culture, blah, blah, blah. The problem they had in the Vitality was there's just no players left in the French scene. And unless you're willing to gamble on Kenny S and people like that, you're just not going to get anyone. Like there was no up-and-coming talent in the French scene, unfortunately. Like they've destroyed whatever pipeline they had. And quite frankly, they already tried all the rookies. Like Masuta was halfway decent. Navira was all right for a while. And quite by the way, it was never going to work out long-term if you knew any of the behind-the-scenes shit that people said about that guy. So I think it was the right move to go international. And crucially, this is why it was the right move as well. You're not just any international team. You've got fucking Ziwu. Like, if you have a player that good, you don't have to have the best tactics around him, mate. People, in fact, if I'm someone around Ziwu, right, I'm literally looking at what Perfecto does in Na'Vi. My job is not to die. If I don't die, we might win the game because I've got the best player on my team. Like, I want more people like that around Ziwu, not people where it's like Hyojin. Like, one day he could be a good fragger. Like, what can he do for me today? Nothing is the answer. Like, that was just a shot in the dark and it failed. So, to me, the only question I have about the team is, I was actually surprised. I don't know if anyone else saw this. I couldn't find it when I was looking it up now. I saw there was like some interview where it was implied that Apex will stays the in-game leader, though. That is the part that surprised me, because I actually thought when they were getting Mcginis, maybe that was for him to become the in-game leader, because I even told, if you want a spoiler, once I knew Glaive was going to re-sign with Astralis, I even told G2 myself, dude, I would just sign Mcginis because you're IGL if I were you. I know he's done it in Astralis a bunch of times now, successfully, by the way, on LAN and online. So if he wants to like change the role or something, because I felt like it was maybe implied that he was, since he was splitting with Glaive, maybe he wants to do that. I thought that would be a good angle. I don't mind the Apex one. I thought he did a pretty good job, and I will say they never really had the pieces to be like number one when he was there as the IGL. Like they had ZywOo, but again, this is why these superstar players actually do skew the game too much for fans. People will look last year at Vitality's team and go, oh, but they were like number one or number two or number three. It's like, yeah, with a guy posting like the best stats you could ever imagine. That actually tells you the opposite, you idiot. It tells you the actual team is not as good as you think. Yeah. He's just boosting them up, isn't he? Like normal players, you shouldn't have to expect that from them. You're allowed to have just like a normal game that, like, I don't know, fucking someone who isn't ZywOo, like Rops will just have like a normal game every now and then. He's supposed to be able to win some of those. If you only win when ZywOo or Simple post like a 1.4 rating, spoiler, your team isn't actually that good. Like the maths just tell you that, don't they? So I think the key player for me in this team is probably Dupree, because I think in Astralis I can give them a lot of leeway because no one knows where the team was. I already knew the whole time a bunch of players are going to leave, some might stay, no one knows where they're going to because it's all the roster drama. Right, I can understand playing not that great then, but if he's in this team and you want them to be like a team that can win the major, he's got to be like one of the best players in the world again. He's got to get back to the level he was at. Like even a year ago he was pretty good still. Like if he can become one of the best players, and he is one of the most consistent in history, I'll give him that, then this could be a really exciting team. Because again, right, forget the language part. If ZywOo's going to frag out like he is, which I assume he will, and then you have Dupree's, let's say Dupree can just be a top 20 player in the world, and the rest of the players, like I say, you don't have to be good, just don't be bad, just don't like be a negative aspect, do your role. That already is a mega interesting prospect. And here's an angle people probably haven't thought of, is obviously his entire career, ZywOo played under X-Stars as his coach, right? And from this French scene. And I got the vibe when I talked to some of the players in the French scene that, like, because they know he's some, like, genius prodigy player, I got the vibe they didn't really try to fuck with ZywOo much. They kind of just let him do his thing. And then sometimes within the team context, they maybe asked him to play a different spot or whatever. I want to see if Zonic actually unleashes the guy, because I feel like if you're Zonic and you played with someone like Device, by the way, not as good at skilled a player as ZywOo, and you watched people like Simple who could just take over the game, I think you go ham with this guy. You go, listen, I'm going to unleash you completely, mate. I'm going to figure out everywhere I want you on the map. I'm going to encourage you to be more aggressive and proactive, like everything. It's time for you to be the best player, basically. And if you do, I get to win everything as the coach again. Because there's another angle people are missing. You think Zonic isn't mega motivated to prove he can win without Glaive and Device and all those? Of course he is. By the way, low-key, they all want to do that. Glaive wants to win without the others. Device wants to win without, of course they do. Every player, by the way, it doesn't matter how much you like your teammates, you also want it to look like it was just you. That's sick, isn't it? If everyone thinks like Tom Brady style, it was just you, that's low-key your dream, isn't it? So I want to see the ZywOo like Zonic effect, because people are forgetting that part. Like, this is one of the best coaches ever. I want to see, because I don't think he's going to do the Astralis style, by the way. I think he'll readapt it to these new players. It won't be like trying to run shit from 3 years ago.
I think also, what did I want to say? About ZywOo and Zonic. It can happen the same like what happened, for example, with us in Smuya. When Smuya joined us back then in Big, he was really a phenomenal AWPer. Like, he hit his shot at least, but he had to learn a lot about the game. And obviously, we try to implement our style. We try to implement him into our style and our system, and he struggled there a lot. So, getting a new coach, starting again from new, trying to figure out again a new system and all that, even though it will be worked around you, it's still sometimes probably not your comfort zone. So maybe it will be also a little bit issues for ZywOo in that case, that he's going to struggle a little bit with that. But I think that Zonic has absolutely the potential to unleash this guy, and once he is unleashed, we know what can happen. And like you said, everyone else in the background has to just do their job pretty much. And also, let's not forget about Mcginis. If he is not the in-game leader and he actually gets to the numbers that he did, like, I don't know, when was it, in 2019, I think it was, just before Corona, I think he was very, very good, very, very good fragger. And he made also a big, he had huge impact in the games that Astralis played back then. And I think that with Zonic, I think he's the right guy to make actually this team work, especially just also because he's so respected in the community and by pretty much every player in the world. So I think they have a good shot at becoming very good.
I actually think on the kind of ZywOo angle, I don't think it's a question of unleashing him, because I believe in general on Vitality over that period, he's always had the space to call around himself. You just fundamentally can't tell a player like ZywOo when he's performing the best on your team that if he wants to play this spot this round, you can't tell him not to, fundamentally. I think the actual question with ZywOo is kind of figuring out how to make like where he's playing very deliberate, and like in terms of you're seeing the other team default in a certain way, and you're going to put him in this spot to beat them and like to actually counter them and run this exact setup. And I think that's what Astralis do a lot with Device. They play a certain way because they, done a lot of prep, and they knew that they're going to take map control like this. Let's put Device in this setup with these nades, with these players here. So that's actually what I really want to see with ZywOo, is more of a kind of comprehensive system around him, and using him he's got the skills to like completely punish other teams for how they're playing and really switch up his style from game to game, rather than ZywOo being almost the master of his own destiny all the time. So that's kind of the main change up I want to see in terms of him, and on the kind of the Magus angle, even if he's not calling, having another really vocal player on the team, someone who can help with the mid-rounding, who can go on the other side from ZywOo, from Apex, is so helpful. And in CS, we have a big problem in terms of analysis and always putting it just on the in-game leader when it doesn't work like that. It's across the team. There's so many micro decisions that have to happen, and the in-game leader can't run the whole team. It doesn't work like that anymore, and you have to give so much space to the individuals to call around themselves and kind of coordinate themselves as twos and threes to take map control. And how do you take this fight? Which setup we're going to play? So even if he's not calling, I think he's a big boon for that team. And if you're going to compare him vocally to someone like Shox, I can see Shox being much more inconsistent and much more like playing off feel and just saying, I want to do this, and maybe not always being so cerebral and deliberate. Whereas I do think Magus will be adding a lot in that sense in terms of building up bomb sites, building up that side of the map. So I see a lot of positives for this team. And yeah, and actually also on ZywOo, on some maps with Shox, he didn't always actually AWP CT side Virgo. They just put him on ramp as the rifler because they wanted their best player there. So I'll be very interested to see now with dupreeh whether they're going to have dupreeh AWP some maps, or ZywOo's going to go full on AWPer, because I don't think Zonic he's never dealt with that issue before. So I'll be very interested if ZywOo does go back to AWPing every map and every side.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.